Kia ora everybody, welcome back to the podcast. My name is Te Haunui Tuna. This is Creative Curiosity. First off, I hope you're all doing well during these strange times. And I hope you're being safe, and I hope you're adhering to the rules, because we don't want this next 4 weeks. If you're in NZ, we don't want this next 4 weeks to turn into 8 or 12 weeks. So, yeah, you already know what to do. Stay home. Be a responsible person, and listen to podcasts, listen to content, read, catch up on the things that you've been wanting to catch up on at home. Anyway, today is a Q&A show. It's been a while since I've done a Q&A show. Put out a message on my story the other day on Instagram to get some questions from you all, and thank you for sending them through, those of you who did. We'll start here. Also, this is the first time recording the Q&A show for YouTube, so if you're watching this on YouTube, kia ora. I've got 2 cameras set up. Yeah, it's back into this content creating stuff. Really excited. Got some cool plans too, by the way. First question, have you found your life's purpose? If so, how did you discover it? Yes, I did discover it, and it was a few years ago, 2017. And as I say this too, just bear in mind that this is where I am currently in my life. It may adjust, it may change later on down the line, but at the moment this is it. And it is answered in one question, my primary question, which I learned at Tony Robbins at Date with Destiny, and it is, how can I appreciate and experience love more so I can add value to mine and other people's lives? And if I were to break that down, it means appreciating love from myself as well as from other people around me, from my whānau, from my darling, from my friends, from other people who follow the journey, who I really, really appreciate. And it's about kind of being present in those moments, I suppose. And when I can do that, when I can appreciate those times, it fills up my cup. And when my cup fills up, I have more to give. And when I have more to give, I can add more value to other people, as well as adding value to myself. For example, doing this right now, I hope it does add value in some way. It definitely adds value to me, because for me, especially with the camera setup, every single time I set up is one step closer to becoming more proficient at, making videos using my camera gear. So that's my question. And the reason that's my question is I want to be able to add value to Māori people's lives, particularly, especially the younger generations. And the way I see that happening is through storytelling, through doing my art, and sharing Māori stories, in the hopes that it can inspire our people to want to be more, to want to be better, to want to inspire other people as well. And so, for example, when I was younger, when a lot of people my generation, my age, we used to watch Dragon Ball Z, and we wanted to be Goku, we wanted to be Super Saiyan, and it inspired you as a young kid, as a young boy, to want to be better. And it really, for me anyway, I'll speak for myself, it opened my mind. It made me think about the possibilities of being more. And I feel like when you see stories that you can identify with, it affects you a bit more. So if Māori people can see Māori stories being celebrated and having the light shone on them, hopefully it hits them a little different, and it makes them feel a bit inspired to go out and get it, whatever getting it means for them. So I hope that answered your question. Thank you for that. Next question is, how and when did you discover Gary Vee's content? I was introduced to Gary Vee from my brother Rand's Plant-Based Māori a few years ago, maybe 2017, I think. And he had been listening to him for a little bit before I finally watched a video of his. And the only reason I watched a video of his was because he did an interview with Tony Robbins, and we had sort of freshly just come off Tony Robbins vibes. And to be honest, my first impression of him was he was annoying, because he just bloody didn't shut up, and he kept cutting Tony Robbins off. And it really irked me, but for some reason I just kept watching him. I think it was probably because my brother Rance, he said he did the same for him too, but when he gave him a bit of time, you end up realizing the value that he has to give, and he's just so passionate about what he talks about that he can't contain himself, and he ends up cutting people off a lot of the times. And I understand too that if you want to be offended by somebody cutting someone off, then you can. But if you're willing to look past that and look at the gems that Gary Vee drops, then yeah, he's all for you. Favorite art pieces? I don't know. It's funny because, like, although I'm an artist, I'm not much of a consumer of art. I don't know. I like all sorts of artists. I'll just pick a few. Boris Vallejo, who's a fantasy artist. Look him up. You've probably seen his artwork before. Drew Struzan, he's an artist that I've looked up to for a while, like for the last 7 years. Probably for longer than that, but 7 years ago was when I actually discovered who he was and his name. And he's the guy who did all the posters for like Star Wars, Indiana Jones, even some of the early Harry Potter posters. And it's the style that I've been trying to not replicate, but it's the style that my latest works, the portraits I've been doing, has been inspired by. So Drew Struzan. And in another realm, this is art as well, in my opinion, cinematography, and that is Roger Deakins. If you're into video, you probably heard of Roger Deakins, famous cinematographer. He won the Oscar for cinematography this year, and he won another one maybe last year, I think, or the other year for Blade Runner. But yeah, so there's some of my favorite artists and favorite art piece. I can't think. That's too hard. There are too many. Apologies too. There's going to be flies flying around in here. It's ridiculous. I can't get rid of them more, so they'll fly in and out. I don't have a favorite art piece. What do you recommend for artists trying to make a living creatively? First off, that's what this podcast was built on the idea of living a creative life and making money from it, and getting guests on who actually live that lifestyle as well, and in all forms of creativity. But for me, I would recommend whatever craft it is you do, whatever art form you're into, do it every day. I know I don't do it every day, but when I do it, I'm like hard out. But in the early days, like when I was on the come up, I would do it most days, especially as a kid, because it's something that I would do when I was bored and something that I actually enjoyed doing. So I would recommend doing your craft every day, looking for artists, continuously looking for different art or different artists in your realm who inspire you, and trying to break down their artwork and find out why it appeals to you, what's cool about it, and replicate it. And this is just for practice, by the way. Don't just copy somebody's picture and pass it off as your own. But I believe in looking at artists for inspiration, like trying to do their style, just to understand maybe some of the thinking behind their style. And then when you do that, find another artist, and then it eventually you start forming your own style. And really, really try and focus on your lane too. Don't try and do stuff that other people do well, and something that you actually don't even like. So if you're a person who likes to draw portraits and you don't like drawing landscapes, don't draw landscapes. Draw portraits, and just portraits. Because if you can focus on your lane, you can get better at it. And when you get better at it, people want to pay you for it. And just share your stuff heaps. Share it all over Instagram. Instagram's a perfect place. Facebook, everywhere. TikTok is blowing up too, especially for creative people. It's definitely a creative app. And just keep sharing, and offer to do stuff for free, like to people who you look up to, and then they can be your recommendation to other people. And you just rinse and repeat. You just keep doing that until eventually, if you're good enough, and this is a thing, you have to be honest with yourself too. Like, the market will be able to tell you whether you're good enough. And the market is people who are willing to pay you. If they're willing to pay you, you're good enough. And don't be in a rush to make it, I suppose. It takes a while. Some people obviously make it a bit faster, and try not to compare yourself to where other people are, where other artists are, unless that inspires you. But if it doesn't inspire you, it just makes you feel downhearted that you're all the way at the beginning, don't do it. And try not to forget why you started in the first place. And that's about it. That's what I would recommend. How did you learn to design moko with meaning instead of just to look good? I was lucky. I grew up with my dad being an artist, and he taught me what he knew, and then eventually introduced to my brother, Cy McLeod, who's really one of my really, really good mates, and he taught me a lot about moko. And yeah, says like that. It really comes down to surrounding yourself with people. Wherever you are, whoever sent this question through, look for moko artists around you and ask if you can be an apprentice. And the best way to ask, in my opinion, is to draw a lot, do plenty of work, and show them, say, kia ora, my name is blah, blah, blah. I really, really appreciate your work. I'm wanting to learn about moko. Will you be willing to teach me? And what I have to offer is I can clean up, I can set up for you, I can do whatever it is you want me to do. And just be really, really kind and understanding that they may say no. And if you want to as well, there are Māori art schools that you could go to. One in particular, Toihokura down in Gisborne. Good place to start. And that's it. What cameras are you using? I've got 2 cameras at the moment. That one is a Canon 5D Mark IV, and that one is a Canon 1DX Mark II. And they both are really good cameras. But if I could go back and change things, I wish I bought the Canon 5D Mark IV first, as opposed to Canon 1DX. So, and then with the Canon 1DX money, I would have bought a Canon C200, which is a camera I want to buy later on, which costs a little bit more than the 1DX by itself. And the reason being is they're both photography and video cameras, and I only need one photography camera and one dedicated video camera. So yeah, that's what I would have done different. If you're in the market, do your research. Just YouTube. I just YouTubed hard out until I found stuff that people whose videos I like. I use the cameras that they use. Really, it's like in anything. If you find an artist, if you can, like obviously if you can afford it, but if you can't, just get whatever you can get your hands on. Start with your phone. How do you prioritize your ideas for projects? Like what idea or project to create first? I'm pretty terrible, to be honest. I'm pretty terrible with prioritization, with organization. I get sidetracked super easily. For example, the time now is 8:41 p.m. I was supposed to do this video way earlier on in the day, but I'm finally here. What else? I procrastinate a lot. But how I prioritize, depending on what I've got going on, if something has a deadline, obviously try and do that first. But I'm working on trying to implement creation for creation's sake, because this is a thing that I learned last year, was I wouldn't create unless it was for work, and I wouldn't create just for the sake of it, which is the reason I began this whole journey in the first place when I was a kid. So yeah, I'm still working on it, how to prioritize things. My biggest weakness is consistency. Like, I'm super inconsistent, as you probably would see with all my content uploads and all that. Like, I have waves where I go hard out and the times when I don't. Part of it is just overthinking things, like trying to make things too perfect all the time, which is how I am wired. But I know I can rewire myself, and big reason for that is just being afraid of making dumb content, really, or being afraid of making artwork that sucks. And I had to just remember that, I'm being too hard on myself, and to just create. So that's what I've been doing lately with these portraits and stuff that I've been doing. Yeah, that kind of didn't answer your question, but yeah, I hope that helped in some way. And last question, what's your general process from idea to a finished work of art? I'll talk about it in regards to each of the different things that I do. For moko, let's start with moko. So all the moko that I do are freehand. Most moko artists, they're freehand. If not all moko artists, I wouldn't see why you wouldn't be a freehand moko artist. What I'm looking for, or what I'm looking at, is when they come in, the body part that they're getting done. Let's say, for example, they're getting a half sleeve, so shoulder down to that area, down to your elbow. The way I look at it is because I have a basic understanding of anatomy, and I can see where the delt comes down to, where the tricep sort of flows, and things that look nice. I create basic lines and rough lines that help accentuate the arm, or help accentuate whatever body part it's on, and then I start building on that and start trying to make designs and curves and stuff that accentuate that basic design, and I build up from there. So that's moko, that's how I do that. My process for drawing atua, so drawing moldy gods, the pencil ones, is first finding some writing or learning about the god first, or the atua. So for example, if it was Tani Mahuta, god of the forest, and forest life. So when I think about the forest, I think about trees, vines, greenery, obviously, animals. I think about unkempt. I think about a survivor, somebody who can withstand the elements. So with that, like, I tell the story to myself over my life, through looking at images and stuff. I've subconsciously been saving all these images in my mind, different references, and then from that description of the atu, I can pretty much instantly get a basic idea of a drawing. Then I'll roughly sketch it out. Once I've sketched it out, if I want to adjust it, I keep adjusting it until it looks nice, and then I can start refining it a little bit till it gets to a point that I don't need to refine it anymore, and then I'll start the proper drawing. I'll start a final rendering of the drawing, and then when I'm doing that as well, I've got references of imagery that's related to that atua. So I've got references of trees, plants, animals, anatomy. Every single time I've got anatomy references, so I know that no matter what, the drawing looks anatomically correct. So that's my process for drawing atua. My process for logo designs. Start with whatever the idea is and try to capture the essence of what that idea is, and do not listen to 100% of what the client wants, because 10 times out of 10 they're not an artist. Otherwise, they would have done it themselves. And a lot of the time, they want you to put 20 ideas into one small design. And that comes down to you, realizing your value and what you have to add. So you just do rough sketches, It's up to you. Do 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, however many you want to do, different variations of these designs. And what I do, this was when I used to do logo stuff, and I like, in saying that, take this with a grain of salt, I haven't done heaps of logos, but I've done some. I put a lot more effort into the designs that I really like in order to try and coerce them into going with the design that I want to do. And then you refine that, give it to them, and you got to sell the idea to them as well. And simple is better. Simplicity is best when it comes to logos, because at the end of the day, a logo doesn't matter as much as the brand that goes with their logo and the story that goes with their logo. For example, Nike. Like, if you were to just be born today and you grew up and you never ever saw Nike anywhere, you never got told about it, and then one day you just saw the logo, you'd think it's just a nothing. It's just a basic ass design. But because we were brought up in a world where Nike is associated with all these different things, when we see their logo, it means something to us. There was a bit of my thinking behind logo design. But yeah, this is the Q&A show. Hope you enjoyed this video, this podcast. Might have rambled on a bit, but yeah, hopefully you guys got some value from it. I'll see you for the next one. I'm going to record another episode now and then get that out as soon as I can. Mauri ora.